14th of December. That final will cover the remainder of lecture, which is going to be cardiovascular and renal. And the final will start at 5 o'clock sharp. And here's the deal. For those of you who want to show up early and get out early, you show up at 5 o'clock. For those of you who cannot make it at 5 o'clock, you show up at 5:30. No harm, no foul. That test will be 2 hours approximately in duration, just like we're normally scheduled for. Yeah.
So there's no like returning information from other tests on it? It's just the renal and cardiovascular?
I would say there's always information that we had previously. You're asking, is it comprehensive?
Yeah, is it comprehensive?
Yeah. So just a few moments ago I said it will cover the cardiovascular and the renal lectures.
Okay.
That's it. Any questions about that? Any questions about the schedule? Okay, so we're transitioning into the cardiovascular section of the class, and let me just state that step number 2 and 3, which is gas transport, is already large. It's going to become gigantic, because under step number 3 you'll find out that not only are we talking about the heart, but we will be talking about the kidneys. So much of what the kidneys do is to regulate the concentrations of ions within the body, but they also control the performance of the heart by regulating blood volume. Really important story, tons of information that will show up under step number 3. Tonight what we're going to do is we're going to just do a brief review of the anatomy of the heart. We're going to start off with our diagram over there, label it. I'm expecting that on test number 4 you guys will show up. You'll be able to tell me the 5 steps. You'll be able to tell me the partial pressures of oxygen everywhere in the model. You'll be able to tell me the partial pressures of CO2 everywhere in the model. You'll be able to tell me the chambers, the valves, the vessels, the conduction system of the heart. Then from there we're going to get into what is referred to as a cardiac cycle. There are 2 phases of the cardiac cycle. The first is known as diastole. Diastole is the resting phase. It's the phase during which the ventricles are filling up with blood. And then there's systole. Systole is the work phase. That's where the ventricles eject the blood out. And for us, of any chamber in the heart, which chamber are we interested in the most? Mentioned it so many times in here. Left. The left ventricle. Why the left ventricle, Farzad?
Sorry?
Why are we interested in the left ventricle?
Because the blood goes to the whole body from the
That's correct. The left ventricle is providing the oxygen and the nutrients for every cell in the body. So the left ventricle of any chamber of the heart is clearly the most important one. So we'll talk about these 2 different phases, diastole and systole, and then we'll get into talking about stroke volume, which is the volume of blood ejected during a cardiac cycle. So when you feel your heart beat, the stroke volume would be the volume of blood ejected out during that particular beat. Then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what are the factors that determine stroke volume. We'll talk about end diastolic volume and all the various factors that influence it, and we'll talk about end systolic volume. We're not going to get very far tonight. We probably are going to get right up to cardiac cycle, so we won't probably get into this part of the lecture. Anyways, that's the guideline for tonight, and on with the show. I do want to do that. Listen. All right. So first off, let's just return back to where we were many, many weeks ago at the beginning of the semester, and let's talk about some of the anatomical features of this model up here. And again, I say this, I'm not sure how it registers with everybody, but if you're having a difficult time with this diagram and you think that it represents the true anatomy of the body, come see me afterwards. This is not an anatomically correct drawing. This is a logic model. Logic. What leads to something else? What are the steps that regulate cardiac output? So let's start off up above, and we have blood returning back to the lungs. What's the name of the blood vessels that are taking blood from the right ventricle back to the pulmonary circulation?
Pulmonary artery.
The pulmonary
Artery.
artery. Excellent. So here I'm just going to label this PA, pulmonary artery. Just showing a narrowing of the vessels here to indicate the presence of a capillary network, a capillary bed. So the blood flows from the pulmonary artery into pulmonary arterioles, and from arterioles into capillaries. So where I have the narrowing, I'm just going to put P period C period. And you guys are going to interpret that to mean pulmonary capillaries. Remember, gas exchange occurs at two places in the body. Number one, the capillaries in the lungs, and number two, the capillaries within the tissues of the entire organism, the entire body. So it's here that we have step number 2, gas exchange, with oxygen entering into the blood and CO2 leaving the blood. The blood then is collected into venules and then into veins, and so we have blood emptying back onto the left side of the heart. In here I'm going to put pulmonary, oh that was good, in R, pulmonary veins. And this blood flows back to the left side of the heart, and it empties into the left atrium. So I'm going to simply put a abbreviation of LA, and you guys can tell me that that stands for left atrium. And from the left atrium, then the blood flows into the left ventricle. There's a valve that regulates the flow of blood from the left atrium into the left ventricle. And the name of this valve is the left AV valve. Excellent. So I'm just going to write left AV valve. The ventricle then pumps the blood out into the systemic circulation, and there's a valve that regulates the flow of blood from the left ventricle out into the aorta, and the name of this valve is the aortic valve. And now this oxygen-free blood flows through the arterial tree into the arterioles, and then ultimately into the capillary bed of the tissues where gas exchange can take place in the periphery. The blood now has oxygen removed from it. All of you would tell me that partial pressure of O2 here in this diagram would be 60 millimeters of mercury, 20 millimeters of mercury, or 40 millimeters of mercury. 40 would be the correct answer. The partial pressure of CO2 at this point in the diagram would be what?
48.
Thumbs up, excellent. So we have this blood that's oxygen poor, CO2 rich, returning back to the right side of the heart. The blood vessels, even though I'm showing them from the bottom, remember this is a logic diagram. This isn't showing you an anatomically correct diagram. The vessels bringing blood back to the right atrium are the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. So the superior vena cava is bringing blood back from above the heart, the inferior vena cava from below the heart. So here I'm just going to simply write S period V period C period and inferior vena cava. This blood then empties into the right atrium. And here's where some students who don't appreciate the logic get very confused. They don't appreciate the movement of the blood and where it's moving to, what chambers it's filling up. Remember, blood's coming back to the right side of the heart.